The Nikon Z9 Mark II is back in the news. We've got expected pricing and a caution on AI-generated specs that are being passed off as leaked specifications, simply to get views. Will the Nikon Z9 Mark II cost over $6,000? Will it have a global shutter sensor and deliver 240 frames per second continuous shooting? Click that subscribe button and we'll get right to it. It means more to us than the acquisition of Red to a Nikon video shooter. Hi, I'm Simon, your friendly, scruffy-looking nerf herder of a street photographer who scans the news and rumor sites so that you don't have to, saving you time for more important things like binge-watching old episodes of Star Trek and TJ Hooker. For some time now, AI-generated YouTube channels have been teasing of the Nikon Z9 Mark II, specifications that seem, well, plausible but also a little bit ridiculous. Now these are nothing but made-up forecasts being passed off as leaks. And we know because, well, we're getting real specs, leaks. Oh, and as far as the price goes, we've heard from multiple people that components from China and Japan will cause the Nikon Z9 Mark II to cost over $6,000 US. This is largely due to government tariffs. I can't really say I'm surprised. We have seen the price of goods go up in the United States in 2025 by, well, varying amounts. But the United States isn't alone, and it's not always tariffs. We've also seen prices soar based on, well, many things due to inflation and, of course, fluctuations in the exchange rates. The Ordinary Filmmaker was the first channel to report that the Nikon Z9 Mark II will be announced in Q4, likely around late October with, I don't know, I'd say probably the best time frame for an announcement would be October the 28th to the 30th. We've not heard anything else from Nikon. They're being very quiet. We still believe we're going to see the camera announced in the fourth quarter of 2025. Well, that covers the date and price, and now for the specifications. And this is where things get, well, just a little bit murky. I do have some validated specs, but let's go ahead and see what the AI-generated videos are saying about the Nikon Z9 Mark II. They're saying that we're going to get the same 45 megapixel resolution, but unlike the Mark I, the Mark II is going to get a global shutter sensor. Let that sink in for a moment. 45 megapixels, or megapixels, that's an awful lot of information to be able to do a global shutter sensor. The Sony A9 III, well, it's at 24 megapixels, so half the size. Now, according to my source, this isn't going to happen. The Z9 Mark II will not have a global shutter sensor. The global shutter sensor camera coming from Nikon is at least 2026, still in pre-production. In the lab, it's not even field tested. And that was back in March, folks. So you can see where this is going. We have the very first specs, the validated specs. The AI-generated specifications are purely predictions being passed off as leaks. I trust my source over these AI-generated videos any day, or I wouldn't be putting out this video. For those of you who've been watching this channel for a long time, I love to get clicks, but I'm not about to sell my soul to get them. All right, now for the other specifications. The Nikon Z9 Mark II gets pre-capture RAW mode support, and it also gets a new image processor in the XP8. Sure, a new generation of the Z9, a new image processor certainly makes sense. I'll go with that too. And in terms of pre-capture, RAW, well, also plausible and nothing new. Now, 40 frames per second RAW, well, that can quite easily usher past 2.2 gigabytes per second. A speed of this velocity would require support for V4 CF Express cards, though nothing is mentioned in these AI videos. But if it isn't fast enough for you, well, you can get 240 frames per second continuous shooting JPEG. And I know what you're thinking. You're thinking, well, hold on a minute, Simon. JPEG, the files are a lot smaller, right? We can easily do that on standard V3 cards. Well, not exactly. Assuming an average file size of 16 megabytes, which is kind of in the middle of that range for JPEGs, that's a staggering 3.84 gigabytes per second. Even the fastest V4 cards can't sustain that. But if we choose JPEG Fine and Large, well, that's 24.1 megabytes per second for a file size of 5.784 gigabytes per second. Well, this is where the AI-generated specs break down. If it could generate 240 frames per second in JPEG, well, there would be a ton of caveats and, pause for dramatic effect here, it would be absolutely useless for pro photographers. These specs simply... Okay, what Ryan's telling me is, well, it could have a really big buffer inside, and sure, they could do that. They haven't in the Mark 1, but again, these supposed leaked AI-generated specs don't indicate that to solve the problem. These AI specs simply just grab existing specs and increase them without understanding the limits of technology or what it's like to be a photographer, and keeping in mind that this is a flagship series camera, not a toy. But there is one thing that the AI-generated specs produce that caught my attention, and that's the possibility of a hybrid global shutter sensor. That's because Nikon published patent JP 2024-054607, filed on October the 15th, 2022, and JP 2024-138158. That one's been updated over the years going back to 2016. And the key thing about these patents is that they propose using both global and rolling shutter in the same frame. For fast-moving sports subjects, the area of fast movement will be treated just as a global shutter, and the rest of the frame will be treated as a rolling shutter. This would allow Nikon to keep the cost down, and it's certainly plausible. And Canon also just recently released their own patent application proposing something very similar. It just depends on how successful hybrid sensor technology was when they produced this patent application. And more importantly, if they were able to scale it and keep the costs down. So it's plausible, but once again, it shows the inconsistency within AI-generated specs. It either has a 45 megapixel global shutter sensor, or it has a 45 megapixel partially stacked hybrid global shutter sensor with rolling shutter capabilities. And as far as the date, well, they basically parroted our timeline of Q4 of 2025. I would love to give you more, but Nikon is being very careful with what they say and who they say it to. And that's coming from that same trusted source. Everything I'm putting out on Nikon is coming generally from the same area. And if you actually overhear something related to the Nikon Z9 Mark II or the other global shutter sensor camera that's coming out in 2026, then please reach out to me either through my email or through WhatsApp. Now, my email address is right here, because I want to be able to inform all Nikon fans everywhere. And if you're interested in pre-ordering the Nikon Z9 Mark II, when it comes out, obviously, when the embargo's lifted, then please copy down my smart pre-order links down below. I've actually got Wax Photo Video in the UK, so that's a new one. And in the United States, I've got B&H, Adorama, and Amazon. I hope to have Germany, France, and Australia set up soon. And if you happen to work for a major retailer in any of these countries, then please reach out to me to get things set up. Thanks so much for watching, and thanks for using my links. This channel is very much viewer supported. You're literally helping to keep the lights on, as I get around 2 to 4% commission with every purchase. Thanks so much again for watching. It's very much appreciated and never taken for granted. I'll see you again soon. And again, a big thanks to my sources. Again, you help keep this channel on the air. Cheers, have yourself a good week, and we'll see you again soon, most likely tomorrow morning at the same time.